we've had lots of kids and staff in and out, but teachers are adaptable. We just make it work. So.
Yeah. Have you gotten your shot yet? Teacher?
Yep.
Yeah. And all your teachers there?
No. So how it worked so school counselors and school psychs in Sarpy County, we were actually able to be one of the first because they mental health provider category. We fell under that. So mental health providers were kind of that tier 1. So we were able to.
As they should be right now.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
So I got my second shot last Thursday, and so just waiting the next couple weeks and should be fully good to go. I almost just feel bad talking about it though, because I know there's so many people who, are waiting and wanting it too. So, but yeah, we'll just.
The goal is to get everybody vaccinated, and the sooner the bulk of people get vaccinated, the sooner everybody else, the more vulnerable, the sooner everybody else can. So don't feel guilty. Yeah. How's everybody else doing?
Good. How's everybody?
Good.
Hey, Paul, did you get my voice message yesterday?
Yeah, I did. I'll follow up with you today.
No worries. I just want to make sure you got the info.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's give it one more minute.
I have to introduce you all. We were crazy enough and decided to get a new puppy. So
my gosh, look at
me. Yeah.
Oh.
What is it? Or
He's
she
a
or
golden doodle. So Ellie, our golden doodle, we got during quarantine. Her mom and dad had babies, and so we follow where we got Ellie, and we saw they had babies, so we're like, okay, one more, and then we're done. So
oh my god,
so cute.
So yep. So
full size golden doodle, or
he will be. Yep. He will be. He's about 5 pounds right now. But pretty soon he'll be probably closer to 70, like his sister. So
Hazel was, I think she was like 6 or 7 pounds when we got her, and she's a mini golden doodle, and she's only like total 28 pounds.
Huh? Isn't that tell genetics? You just never
but
know.
her brother from the litter just before her is 42 pounds. So yeah, that's great. Okay, so we got a new puppy. How did you guys, let's just head into this, because we're going to run out of time if we don't. And I'd like to have like a 5-minute, 10-minute break before we go into the mentor class. Mentor class, by the way, is going to be Nate Yeager, who's going to talk to us about all things title, escrow. And so I hope you guys have some questions. In fact, I want you to all have at least one question. So between now and then, if you don't have one question, figure out one that you're going to ask him, because I don't care how long you've been in the business. Title is a very, very complicated thing. They make it look really easy because you give them the stuff and then you show up at closing. But if there's anything that happens in between, it's always like oh my God, now what do we do? Because it's legal stuff. So, and it reminds you of all of the things that you had to learn to take your real estate test that you haven't learned, you haven't used again. That's always the fun time. So, yeah. So let's talk about working with the buyer part 2. You guys all watched that video? We all on the same page here? Okay, good. I think we'll be on the same page until we finish this now that the teacher has gotten unconfused. So I usually watch it just before the class. I watched it again this morning, and it always like brings up so many really good things for me. But I want to know something you got from that is usable information, or that created another question for you. So I'm going to go around the room, or else you guys can volunteer. Don't really care which way you do it. So who wants to start this?
I can start. His note that they may have to lose the first house, I feel like is even more so now than ever. I started with both my buyers by saying you're putting in multiple we're likely putting in multiple offers. But that was interesting to hear him say that at a normal market speed.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
hadn't really considered saying that at a healthy time.
How do you say it? Because you look like you're a little afraid of it.
I remember my one set of clients being surprised at that, which I guess it's just we were both new and I was pretending not to be.
Yeah.
So I guess I was surprised they were surprised a little bit. But so I don't know if I didn't word it delicately enough. I basically just said, and as we go into putting in offers, just keep in mind that it may be a few before we get one accepted. And that's pretty much
Mhm.
as plainly as I put it.
Is that how you still do it now?
Haven't had a new one since then.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay.
Comes out.
All right.
Yeah, when he was talking about walking through, or when he was talking about at the end and revisiting the parameters, and I guess letting them know that there were more houses to go look at, like no matter what, no matter if they liked it or not. I was thinking like, oh my gosh, no, they like it. They should put it in offer, like, but that's just, market difference. And I guess that'll, change. But yeah, when I was watching it, that's kind of where my mind went to, as I was thinking, is he going right to these next houses right now? Is he like planning on waiting a few days? Like, because right now we have this mindset of like, oh, you like a house, you better jump on it. But
well, and yeah, and that, you bring up a really good point. Is that, should we be saying that to clients too, or should we be feeding into the frenzy? What do you guys think of that?
So my thought is you got to know your buyer personally, because they're like the buyer that I'm working with right now. If they were to fall in love with a house and I say, okay, well, let's go look at another house, they're going to talk themselves out of that first house one way or another, looking at regardless of what's happening with the next house or two or three. So you just got to know who you're working with.
Mm-hmm. But do you guys think that, and I don't have it, this is not a trick question. Do you guys think that we as agents feed into the creating of stress? Absolutely. There's 1,000%. This is a super stressful market. It's very difficult. And I will tell you, if there's anything that you can hone up on right now, it's being a strategist. More than anything, being strategic about what you're doing is probably going to be your biggest. It used to be that people would refer me and they'd say, she's a really good negotiator. I didn't even know that until I started asking them. Like, she's a really good negotiator. I don't think my negotiating skills have as much to do with it anymore as my strategy skills. So that's something that I am getting more educated about. Strategy, not my natural ability to be a strategist, but what are the strategies that people are using? And I will tell you, I'm not finding them out in this marketplace. I'm finding them out from talking to agents in other marketplaces or listening to them. If you just want to listen in on what people are talking about, there's a lot of conversations that go on places like Clubhouse. Are you guys all signed up for, or have you had any experience with Clubhouse? I've got about, I think, 4 or 5 invitations. You have to be by invitation. You have to have an iPhone. They haven't done it for the foreign language phone to me. Android is like foreign language to me. Laura has Android, and if anything goes wrong with it, I'm like, I got nothing. I don't know how to fix it or undo that. So right now you have to have an iPhone. So if any of you would like to have an invitation to Clubhouse and just kind of like peruse what it is, send me a text, and I'll, you know, as many as I have, I'll give them to you guys to jump on. There's all kinds of different categories and all kinds of different conversations. I actually have a show on Thursday mornings at 9 o'clock with Barbara Betts and Brad Knoll, a guy that I'm going to actually be having on our ATAs at the end of this month, every Thursday morning at 9. So if you want to kind of try it with somebody familiar, jump on that one. So Kathy, are you on Clubhouse or have you been?
I am. I was going to ask you if you have, in addition to yours, other similar recommendations. I feel like what I'm finding, at least in the rooms that I've happened into just by kind of scrolling when I'm available and turning it on, it's just a lot of yammering. It's not really any.
You're right.
I find it very annoying, and I started getting phone calls from these people trying to sell me stuff. It's
seriously like
so it made me hop off of it, and I think if I knew where to pop onto, I'd feel more likely to engage. But for the moment, I've kind of backed away.
So there's a couple of ones that I honestly, I'm on the one that I do myself, and maybe one other one just while I'm like getting dressed in the morning. And that will only be if Barbara Betts is on it. If I see she's in something, and I think I just saw one the other day, and then April Tucker has one or two, and she does. I have not listened, really for a long time on hers, but she does all kinds of different subjects. So I'll gather some of that and give it to you, because I don't blame you. I've been like, oh my God, what are these people talking about? But I think my point is, and it doesn't have to be Clubhouse, is talk to agents and say, what are you doing? Like, what are the things that what's your secret sauce? What's one secret sauce? Something that really helps us is we offer a $500 credit to the seller for professional cleaning before they move out. Like, that seems stupid, but to them, it seems like something that they really like. Making sure that you work along with what their timeline is, those little small things. But we currently are working with a buyer that's insisting, they're a NIFA buyer. I'm like, oh my God, like, what are we going to do with this? But then that's the part where you, as a buyer's agent, have to be able to go to battle for them. You're their advocate. How do you make them stand out, even though they have, this loan that maybe a seller doesn't want? So, there's all kinds of challenges that I think you have to have. Setting them up for what they're up against sometimes is discouraging. That's what I find. How do you all set people up for, at the beginning in your conversations, set them up for exactly what Kathy, you were talking about, is you're going to lose one, we're going to have to, and you as a buyer's agent are going to have to throw some under the bus sometimes without them agreeing to it. You're just like, you know what? You're not going to get off of this thing where you think you need to do all of these things and have an inspection and, and not have it just for your own benefit. You're not listening to me. So let's just do it. Let's do it your way. Let's do it your way and see. So you just got to be ready to do that. And you have to not be in a position where you're like, damn, I needed that commission, and how many more times do we have to do this? So yeah, talk to me about what you'd say to people.
I was just going to add, Clubhouse, Kathy, I shared some of the same frustration. And what helped me is I figured out a way to set notifications so I just set a notification for when Barb Betts, April, or Carol talk. And then that way you get notified when those people are coming on or are talking. So, because I was the same way, I was like, there's so much, it's hard to weed it out. So
thank you.
You can rest assured, none of those three people are going to waste their time listening to something that's crazy making. So, yeah. And there's other people too. I just don't know who all of them are. There's a couple of them that are really, really good. But I'll give you guys a list. I'll make a list and see if I can give you at least a couple of things. So,
One thing I was thinking about too, just talking to buyers, I think it goes back to Ben Smale and his video that we watched just about the importance of a buyer meeting and the importance of stating all this with your buyer prior to just like standing in their front porch trying to figure out what offer you're going to make. So, letting them know about inspections and all the just kind of ins and outs in this market ahead of time, I think is really, really important.
and isn't that something that should be in your list of things in your buyer interviews? So who all does not do a buyer interview? So y'all get somebody to come in the office before you will show them a house. Anybody that doesn't do that? Okay.
I mean,
you
it
guys
doesn't
do.
always happen right away, but yes, eventually that's my goal, like to get them, even if it's just after the first time we go look at houses.
Okay. So, and the first, you'll go look at houses the first time with somebody that's been referred to you or somebody you don't know.
No, not
Okay,
with somebody I don't
So
know.
these are somebody that's been handed off
Yeah,
from
exactly.
somebody you know. Okay, thank you. I feel better now.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, Rhonda too. The mamas are
Mama
are
Bear
like,
going, no.
yeah. No.
Sorry, yeah, I
So-
should have clarified that.
That's okay. We just I saw Rhonda's face. No, don't do that. Bad doggy. So okay. Scott, what'd you get from the part 2 buyers? I know we're the question, the conversation about buyers is, we've had Ben, we've had, other positive things about it. We've had part 1, part 2 on buyers, but I will tell you that it couldn't be a more important subject to talk about in particular right now. So Scott, what'd you get?
Oh, to keep calm was probably the
Keep
main
calm.
point. You don't want to add fuel to their, or it's already an intense situation, like you said. You don't want to add fuel to that fire.
Yeah. So do you have trouble keeping calm?
No,
Because you look really chill.
yeah, that's what they say. No, I don't really experience too many issues with that.
Okay.
You can kind of put people's mind at ease and just let them know that I kind of forewarn them about the market that we're in beforehand, so they kind of know what they're getting themselves into.
Okay. Do you give them examples?
Well, the market update kind of speaks for itself. I see that the median time's kind of going a little longer now, but it was pretty telling up until the last couple of weeks when it was hours on the market and not days on the market.
Right. Yeah. The one that comes out during every week, though, it has so many, the numbers are skewed because of the amount of new construction homes that are in those numbers. I mean, the average days on the market is not 42. I mean, it's not. The average days on the market of, anything that is not a new construction and it's under $250,000 is, in reality, it's like hours. But because we don't look at offers for 3 days, it's 3 or 3 days. But that's not the reality. So that's what I want people to be able to. I think they do better with the truth than with false sense of security that it's 42 days. So I think that has to be explained. Kylie, what'd you get from the video?
I kind of got some of the same with the being calm thing. I've noticed that every single thing that you do it's never just like easy or routine. There's always something that pops up that you have to kind of take care of or deal with. You could really kind of have to be a little bit of a problem solver.
A little bit?
Okay, a lot. I see everybody on there talking about, okay, who do I get to help me with this? Or who helps me with this? Or I'm stuck on this, or, there's always somebody that's posting on the Facebook line or
Yeah, right.
emails or,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, I think it's really good that we have such a network that you can kind of lean on. But
Yeah.
you're definitely a problem solver, and not one situation is ever even similar to the next one.
Right. Right.
You really have to kind of enjoy doing that.
Yeah. Who hasn't answered here? Jennifer, one thing that you got from it that kind of was an aha for you and something that you're gonna work with.
Yeah, so mine was regarding you always give them space, but where the majority of the time it's quiet, where a lot of people aren't comfortable with silence. And so in my past experience, when I've worked with realtors, I just remember them talking the entire time. And so as I'm looking at homes, so I thought it was interesting that it should be the opposite of that, and allowing people to have their own conversations and kind of digest the space. So that's what I thought was interesting.
That's a very good thing to notice. All of these things that you guys are saying are like super highlights of all of what he was putting out. Yeah, who else has not given us feedback on this week's? Paul.
So I really like just his framing, and he said we're going to take control of the showing, and how he had his 3 questions that he set up with them right there at the beginning of what they wanted to think about when they walk through the house. What do they like? What do they don't like? And could they see themselves living there? And I just really like being able to watch an example of, hey, this is how you do it. This is how you frame it. And I found that really helpful, because those are actually questions that you could use in a buyer's meeting as well, to kind of help them understand this is what we're going to do. And then you can revisit after you look at the house, and it kind of gives you some insight into, where they're really at, how aggressive you might want to be, and, trying to help them along to write an offer, or whether or not you want to kind of, talk them down and slow them down a little bit. So that's what I like.
That was fantastic. I mean, I'm totally impressed with you guys, because you've hit every single point. That was the next thing I was thinking about. Did anybody notice when he stood out in front of the house, how he teed it up? He perfectly teed it up for 3 really, really good questions. And those are 3 really, really good questions. And you're right, Paul, those are good questions to ask at the very beginning as well, when you're setting them up. One of the things that I have them do, Laura and I actually both have them do when we're on in a buyer conference, and is we kind of send them away with homework, especially if there's 2 people. We send them away with homework, and we tell them, I want you to just take a piece of paper, put a line right down the middle, and on one side are negotiables, and on the other side are non-negotiables. And your non-negotiables could be like 3 things. Doesn't matter. They don't have to be equal things, but there are, because as we go through this process, you're going to find some things that you're negotiating that you didn't think you would negotiate on. You were like, it's got to be 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, and it's got to have a shower in the downstairs, and there has to be a fenced yard. And you guys have, some of you who have done this for a while or have been doing it, you've heard this, like, nope, I don't even want to see a house that is not a split level, So there's going to be some things that are, and the interesting thing is when we send them away and say, just send your list to us when we're done, but talk about it first between the 2 of you, and then come up with one list. And usually the guy's list is, I want a garage, or one of the people's is, I want a 3-car garage. And the other person is, I want a kitchen that I can cook in with a big island. There's like those are the only 2 things that no matter what, we need to come up with those 2 things. So negotiable list, non-negotiable list, have both people do it. And then have them talk about it. So now they're involved in it. And yes, Paul.
So that sounds great. I want to ask you a question. So the Buffini program specifically gave us a buyer's checklist, which is a kind of a more formal, concept of what you just described. But I kind of like what you just said, because it's a little bit more open-ended, and it would allow me to ask, why is this non-negotiable?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, I guess I just wanted to ask, obviously you probably like the way you do it, but any thoughts on the brevity of how you do it versus kind of a more formal checklist that some of these programs?
I'm not a really formal checklist kind of person. As soon as you give me a checklist, I'm figuring out how to do it different. Just kind of how I am. I want conversations to be conversations and not interviews, not like, okay, like what medications do you take? And, when you go to a doctor's office, it's like, who in your family died of what? And, I don't like that kind of like going through a checklist. So I think that you can make it formal and informal. So you start talking about, what I'll say is, sometimes I'll say, so in a perfect world, Brian does if I could wave a magic wand, what would your house, when would you be in your house and what would it look like? Like when you walk through the front door, is the kitchen right there? Is the living room right there? Do you go upstairs? Do you go downstairs? because you've pictured something in your mind, and people will usually give you something. And then from there, I start asking like a kind of a general question, especially if it's both two people, a general question, and you'll see immediately there's some kind of different want that each one of them has. And then that's when I usually say, you know what, you guys, let's do this. Let's make a couple of lists. And then I just explain to them what the list is. And then just say, anything that you even have a question about whether it's negotiable or not, put on the non-negotiable list. Then when the two of you sit and talk, like you guys talk about whether this is negotiable or non-negotiable. You're kind of like helping them build some muscles around this process that you're going to be going through, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that's on between the time that, oh yeah, we love this house, this is amazing, and we're so happy, to it's time to close. There's going to be a lot of things. So I think that's more of it than anything. Jennifer, you can jump in here too. But for me, for my style, I'm just not that. I'm more of a. I can get people to talk about things in coaching that if I came after them and said, so do you think something happened in your childhood that maybe is causing you to have these feelings? I don't do anything like that. How did you know? What?
How did you know?
How did I know what? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yes, people tell you who they are by talking about what they like and what they don't like. And I think Brian said it early on. It's more helpful for me to know what you don't like than what you like. So Jennifer.
No, I just had a question. I was curious. So with the non-negotiable and negotiable, have you ever went back and then looked at, so if I was working with you and I said, this is non-negotiable, more times out of none, something that was non-negotiable becomes negotiable. Do you know what I mean?
Almost every single
All the time.
I write it down. We write it in their little file. I'll write that down, and I'll say, would you guys like to see what you talked about was negotiable and non-negotiable? Or halfway through the process, when we're not finding something, it's actually more usable during the process. When we're not finding something, here's one of the things that I will tell you happens often. Okay, we will only go in west of 90th and south of Maple and north of Central. And they send us 3 houses that are, one's in Bellevue, one's in, someplace on 72nd and something. And I'll go back and say, okay, just want to know, we're fine with this, but have you changed this non-negotiable that you had? Because this was one of the things that was on your non-negotiable. Talk to me about how you guys got there, because we don't want to miss something that comes up that you're now open to that. Like it's a process of elimination. See where all these little dialogues come into play. It's the process of elimination, not selection. So if I've already eliminated, Nate Yeager's already here. If I've already eliminated even looking at anything that's east of 90th, I'm going to miss something, and maybe they go to an open house and some agent there talks them into, buying it. So I want to constantly use this as a medical person does when you first come in and they take your temperature and they take your blood pressure and they take your weight. Like if halfway through what they think is going on, one of those things changes, they want to know that. That's why they weigh you every single time you come in. I'm like, oh my God, please don't do this again. It's winter. I have 450 pounds of clothes on. So, it's kind of a taking their vitals.
Jennifer, what I always do with my buyers is I tell them these negotiable and non-negotiable are a guide for me, but essentially they're never going to find that perfect house. I mean, hardly ever. So I'm going to take what they like, and I tell them up front, okay, you say you don't want to look at a split entry, but I'm going to take you through a split entry, because so many times they're like, okay, this is nicer than I thought. A lot of the non-negotiable things are something that they have stuck in their head, but they may not have a really valid reason to back that up.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell them up front, I know you don't want to see this, but we're still going to look at it just to give you a feel, because you might change your mind. You may not, which is fine, but it's my job to show you all of the options out there.
Do you go through it afterwards, Rhonda, with them and say, here's what we had as a list and here's where we ended up? And
sometimes I do, especially if it's something major, where they're like, oh my gosh, I can't live without a 3-car garage, but we get them into a 2-car garage. I will follow up maybe like a month later when I'm talking to them. So how's it going? You really thought you needed this, but how is it really? And they're like, it's fine. I'm so glad that, we found where we found, etc.
Yeah. And in 2 years, we'll sell you a house with a 3-car garage.
Exactly. Or
We'll
4.
sell this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody kind of wrap their head around that. Actually, we should have some kind of a little, I've never even created a form that just we can send over to them that they can, fill out, like something that's actually like you can fill out online. That'd be great. But yeah, so I think that's probably the best way to get that narrowed down. One of the other things, did everybody else answer like what they?
I think so.
One thing we got from there. Okay. The other thing that I was wondering if you noticed is when he showed the house, why is Nate on here already? When he showed the house, he already pretty much knew the house. So he had been through the house. I'm assuming he had been through the house. There are agents who preview houses. Do you all know? Is that something that you do? Is that something that you've been taught?
I have heard it before, but again, entering into this market, it doesn't seem like a possibility.
Exactly.
Got 15 minutes. You better get in there. It's especially when he seems to be in a very high end range. I would think you would know more of those very few smattering of houses. If I were very high end, I would know these multi-million-dollar houses. Absolutely, I would take the time.
Exactly.
To go through those.
Yeah, and I wanted to know if you guys got that from it. Is that if you were in some high end homes, would you be more prevalent? Would it be more prevalent that you would preview them first, because they're obviously not going to, or maybe not going to sell as quickly. And have some kind of sense of what houses have. You know, when you watch the shows, on HD or HGTV, and they show them 3 houses. And before they even walk through the front door, they've already explained the house. They make the turns like they know the house. So they've previewed these 3 houses, and they go through and they make a decision based on these 3 houses. It takes like half an hour, and they make their offer, and that's it, and they're done. Which is fairy tale.
And it's 50,000 over there.
Yeah, and it's 50,000 over their budget. And they actually have a budget, which is interesting. On a $1 million house, they have a budget. So you're leaving. So did you notice that? And do you do any, like, do you arrive at the house if you can? Okay, let's just talk about if you can. Do you arrive at the house a little bit before? What do you what are you ready for? What do you bring? What do you wait till they're at the door to open the house? Do you go in first? Do you turn on lights? Talk to me about what your practices are at this point, or what you need to learn about.
I try to get to the house a little bit early, 5-10 minutes. And when I get there and I get inside the front door, I shoot my clients a text and saying, hey, I'm already inside, come on in when you get here. And I run around and try and turn on the lights and stuff before they get there. And so that I can, do a basic walkthrough and kind of explain what I notice just in my quick 5-10 minute running around like a chicken with his head cut off tour of the house.
Okay. Who else?
Yeah, I try to get there early, and I usually just have printed off like a full agent detail, just because I like to have that paper in front of me. I know some agents will look it up on, Home Snap as they go or things like that, but I like to have that full agent detail with that information.
Right. Okay. Do you bring anything with you to buyer showings? What do you bring?
I bring them a client detail just because I'm kind of old school with regards to paper, just so they can kind of keep track and write some notes if they want.
Okay. Anybody else? What do you bring?
I've started bringing the property disclosure with some of the important dates or items highlighted that I think are a big deal.
Okay. Bridget?
Yeah, those are the 2 things that I bring.
Do you bring a copy of the pre-inspection?
Yeah, I guess if I saw one on there, I might. At least the summary page, maybe not the whole thing, but yeah, if I saw one in there when I pulled up the MLS, I'd probably bring a copy.
Okay. Buyer packets?
Oh.
Or do you give buyer packets at your first meeting?
I bring buyer packets, but I also try, if I have time, look at the surrounding area of the house that I'm bringing them to, so like if the buyer has children, I can call out that there's a park down the street, there's these things, easy access to the grocery store. I try and kind of understand my area as well, so I can highlight those benefits.
Okay. Okay, so let's go to, they've seen the house, they like the house, it's time to write the offer. What's your next move? Dennis, let's get you. You've got a little bit of, you got a few stars on your shoulders for this one.
Okay, so depending on.
Love the house. We want the house.
Okay, so from there, we go back to the office and we talk about what we're gonna write for the offer. I pull up make sure I have all the paperwork and get it all printed out. And sometimes I'll handwrite it out. Sometimes I'll have it on my computer screen and have a paper copy. It just depends. If it's the first offer, a lot of times I just handwrite it out with them after the first one. Then I kind of am more comfortable just doing the electronic while they're looking at a hard copy in front of them.
Okay.
and sit down and discuss, terms of the offer, what they're gonna put down, what they're gonna offer, inspections and all that good stuff.
So what if I don't want to go back to the home center on time? I just took time on my lunch hour to go look at the house.
So in that instance, I would go home and I would write it and send it electronically. And then after I send it electronically, I would call the person and pull it up while they're looking at the PDF and go through it line by line with them.
Okay. Anybody else? Like, do you go in an office? I mean, we've been in COVID for the last year, so that's not always been the possibility. We've actually written a lot of offers and never been in the office with anybody after a showing. So I'm just wondering how all of you handle that. Go in the office, do not go in the office? Do you talk about it outside in front? Do you, okay.
I try to get a lot of what their comfort level is with various things at that initial buyer's meeting, like with the inspections and down payment, all those types of things. So we kind of have a general understanding of what our offers are going to look like. And then, yes, we usually stand at the end of the driveway, so we're out of the house, and kind of talk about it. And then I say, keep talking about it on your way home. I'm going to start writing it up. If you have any, anything you want to talk about more or changes, let me know. And then we do the same. I do like a Zoom or a phone call if they can't, and we go line by line while they have their documents all pulled up and go through it again. That's kind of the first time. Any further times with the same clients, I say, and it's roughly, we'll talk about these little details, but I don't go line by line again unless there's like a new, maybe there's lead base this time that wasn't before. We'll talk about that again.
Okay, you just showed me a $190,000 house. We waited in line to get in. They're looking at offers on tomorrow night. They're looking at offers tomorrow night. 190,000. They're probably going to have a lot of offers. I have a conventional loan, 5% down. Now what do we do? And what do you think, Kathy? What do you think we should offer on this house? Like what do you think?
I'll usually have something pulled like the RPR, kind of a basic analysis of the the CMA that they have. It's kind of a range, and I'll talk about that a little bit, and then I'll mention, but again, in this market, they'll probably get offers that have nothing to do with with what's on the paper. So I've been saying, really think about what your comfort level is in 5 years. Are you still going to be happy with that number if you decide to sell? And then we have been offering pretty close to what their pre-approval is, because my clients have been looking really close to what their pre-approved is. So we haven't had a lot of wiggle room to go crazy with an offer anyhow. So we kind of have a ceiling, and they've been hitting it pretty regularly because they don't want to look any lower. So
Kylie, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I pretty much would just tell them, if you want the house, make your best offer. And
What's your best offer?
What is their best offer? How bad do they want it?
I'm asking you. You're my agent. What's my best offer?
Well, what's your pre-approval?
I'm approved up to 250.
Okay, well, if you're approved up to 250 and you're bidding on a house that's 190, how bad do you want it? That's the whole question in this market is, are you willing to bid 10,000 over what they're asking? Are you willing to bid 15,000 over what they're asking?
Sure. What if it doesn't appraise? What happens to me then?
Exactly. Then you have to be willing to pay the cash difference.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's kind of, it's really in this market, I think, is how bad do you want it?
Well, I think everybody that's looking right now wants a house back.
Yeah. Well, are you willing to pay though? I mean, are they willing to pay that cash difference? That's the biggest, because some people don't have that cash. They're depending on that loan.
I'm being the buyer right now, and you're being my agent. So I'm willing to pay it. I'm just worried
Wonderful.
about what happens. Can you help me with what do I do if it doesn't appraise?
If it doesn't appraise out, then we can either back out or you can pay the difference.
Okay, so can I help you through this just a little
Sure.
bit? What I'd rather hear if I was the buyer
Yeah.
is I'd rather hear you asking me questions of, is there anywhere else that you can get the money? Do you have money you can borrow from your parents? Do you guys have something in savings?
Right.
I would rather have you asking me questions that
Mhm.
I can help solve myself to make sure
Right.
that I'm on that page. So, and not a criticism to you. I'm just telling you from my buyer side,
Mhm.
I'm looking to you to help
Right.
me find solutions that I hadn't even thought of. And is that even okay? Can I borrow? Can I get money from my mom? Is that okay? Sure, that's okay. We'll just talk to your lender. We'll talk to your lender, and your lender can explain to you, which I very seldom ever work with a buyer that I don't know the lender well. Your lender can explain to you how you get a gift letter, and possibly that could be something that could be helpful. So let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can handle it versus, okay, if it doesn't appraise, then you're out of this. Well, then I have a whole lot of other questions around there. Well, do I lose my earnest money? Do
Right.
I, all of those things. So
Exactly.
yes, going back to being the professional question asker is
The
probably.
other thing is though, too, if you already know their situation and know they don't have a gift letter.
Yeah. If you already know that, then you wouldn't need, I don't think you'd even enter into let's go.
So
50,
can you get some money off the money tree? I mean, yeah.
Do you find all of that out before you present your offer then?
Absolutely. I
I try to talk to people and just see where they're at. And because I have had a couple of people that are like, oh, well, we've seen a house we want to go look at. And my first question is I would love to show you a house. I said, have you talked to a lender about a loan yet? And they're like, no. And I said, well, that would probably be our first step before we go look at anything. And they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, do you have any money in savings for, an earnest deposit, some closing costs? And they're like, no, we don't have any savings. So then what?
Well, first of all, if I say in the same conversation, then what would be, it would have changed at the beginning of, you want to see a house? Great, fantastic. Have you spoken with a lender?
Yeah.
No, have not spoken with, I would then not start talking to them about what their financial situation was. I'd say,
I would say, please go talk to a lender.
Do you have a lender that you work with? No, we don't. How about if I hook you up with a lender that we feel really good about? You can talk to them about, I honestly, all of you, I don't want to know people's financial situation.
I don't either.
I have no interest in talking to them about that. And if they
it's so personal.
they won't talk to a lender right away, they're not my client. Never let anybody, this my first advice I ever got in real estate, never let anybody in your car to show anybody a house that's not pre-approved. That was the number one thing that I was given as advice. So that would be my first thing.
And I don't really want to know people's, you don't want to know the details of their checking or savings account. I don't want to tell people mine.
Yeah, exactly. So anybody else, how do you handle that at the writing the offer? That question of, I'm the buyer. I'm asking you, Bridget. I'm asking you. You're the realtor. What should I be offering on this? What do you think? That's the famous question. What do you think?
Well, I suppose it comes down to, I mean, I agree with Kylie on, how much you want the house. And, how, I guess, how flexible you are with, do you want to buy a house that, are you willing to go above the list price for this house, or would you like to stay close to it? Because we do have to consider, whether or not it will appraise, which is kind of what we were already talking about. By this point in time, I guess I'd probably start, if I haven't already, depending where we're at, I'd probably start trying to pull some comps and trying to give them an idea of what houses have been selling for in that area that are comparable, so that we kind of know, is it worth it to spend that much money? Is this house going to be worth it for them? I can't make up their decision for them, but I can give them some information and kind of let them know. And we can work on different things, different flexible ways on getting our offer to stand out.
Right. So those things you're saying too need to be set up ahead of time. Like those are conversations you need to have ahead of time of kind of what their risk level is. Are they, can they back up their risk level? Because, when you get an offer that's, $30,000 over asking price, that's really, great. However, is this really viable? Does this person have the ability? We got an offer on a house recently, and I think I told you guys about this. Was in the $200,000 range. It was 50,000 over was what they were willing to go to. They also gave us proof of funds that were set aside to pay the difference in the appraisal, which that was like, okay, so that piece is off the table. That question is answered. That person did not have to go that high, but I was like, why would you be buying a $235,000 house if you have enough money to buy a $275,000 house that is you could probably get for $285,000, whatever, it just, to me, my kind of sense of how that worked didn't make sense, but yeah, they have to be capable of coming up with the money. So I think that's another thing that can be actually asked is, okay, do you have this money? And, where's this money going to come from if we're going over asking price? I don't know about you guys, but I haven't written an offer that wasn't over asking price for a long time. Rhonda, you're seeing like not only yours, but Tim's. So it's a good number of contracts that you're seeing.
So what do you think the average is that people are going over?
I've seen anywhere from 5,000 to 50,000.
Wow.
Tim had a property. It was a multi-level property that we got an offer $105,000 over asking.
Right.
So is that very wise? Just in general, aren't we getting into a situation where we were way back in the day where we're paying way more for homes than they will ever be worth? And then we're going to be stuck with these people that can't sell them eventually. Is that a concern? Like when people are doing that?
It is a concern, but it's also a demand, and it's a very strange place. By the way, I was in that market in 2006 to 2012, 13. It's a completely different market than that was, because the lending underneath it is completely different. The reason why that fell apart has more to do with the lending, than it has to do with the price of the houses.
Carol, are you and Rhonda seeing appraisals not come through though on these higher when people are going over? I had a lender mention in the class that he was kind of like secretive about it, saying, but they're all getting appraised because that's what the demand is.
We've had one appraisal that didn't come in, and it was $18,000 less. More. Excuse me. The house, the home appraised for $18,000 less than the house sold for. We agreed on the seller came back that 9,000, and we went up 9,000. But that's only one that I've seen. Only-
I've had two recently between mine and Tim's that didn't appraise, but they weren't, the meeting, it wasn't that far apart. It was only a few $1,000s. But again, I just think it's important to have that conversation with your buyers because you want them to be prepared because you don't know what these appraisers, some of them just go off and do their own thing and you're stuck with it, you know.
Yeah, and there's so many appraisers that they call in because they have a need for appraisers, and these guys have not been out in the marketplace for 3 years or even in 1 year. Even 1 year makes a difference. We did a contract with an agent that hadn't sold anything since last August. She was completely oblivious of what's going on in the marketplace. And it was somebody that sold like high-end houses, and this was a $300 and something thousand houses. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, do you understand what's going on in this marketplace? So it's, this is something that changes like with every breath. So
Yeah, and it's an important conversation to have with your sellers too. Like I just had him listed yesterday and I let him know we're going to get an offer. We had an offer in 2 hours of listing it and it was for well over. And you need to have the conversation to set that. If it doesn't appraise, they're going to come back to you to say, are you willing to negotiate?
So it's a both ended. Hey, I want to give you guys 5 minutes to take a break. So, and Nate's waiting. I'm going to let him in, and then you guys come back in 5 minutes. Okay. This is a great conversation. We'll continue it. Next week's going to be seller. I think seller number 1, working with a seller number 1, and we'll have absolutely more conversation. Rhonda, thank you so much for all your contribution to this too, as well as everybody else who piped in. All right. See you guys later.
Hey, Carol.
Yeah.
I have got